Our speaker this evening is Dr. Rachel Lee, Assistant Professor at the Faculty of History of Architecture and Urban Planning, TU Delft, Netherlands. Many of you may already be familiar with her work or read about it in the descriptions for this talk. But in addition to an authority on 20th century Bombay and mapping its topography, Dr. Lee can also be found foraging mushrooms in the Western Ghats, pondering over the everyday objects like the trusty pucker or the tongs found in Indian kitchens. And lately, she has also been on a quest to find planters' chairs from Delft to Kottayam in Kerala for what seems to be a fascinating new research project on this fast disappearing piece of furniture. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Lee to come on and present her talk.
Well, thank you so much, Suhasini and Atul, for the invitation to come to Art Deco Mumbai and share some of my research with you. And thank you, everybody, for giving up some of your Saturday evening to spend it listening to me talking about cosmopolitanism in Mumbai. It's, yeah, I was really super happy to receive the invitation to take part in this because Art Deco Mumbai is a project and a resource that I have been admiring from the sidelines for a long time and also engaging with actively in my own research. So yeah, thank you again for the invitation. The project that I'm going to be talking about today came from research that I was doing when I was based in Munich at the Ludwig Maximilian Universität on a project that was funded by the European Research Council called METROMOD, Global Metropolises, Modern Art and Exile. So yeah, so you can see these are the 6 cities that we were looking at: Buenos Aires, New York, London, Istanbul, Bombay and Shanghai. Let's go to Bombay. Yeah, so you can follow the journey through the information, through the material gathered here through a map. For example, if we click on this, what is this? Emanuel Schlesinger. So you can follow from here to an entry on Emanuel Schlesinger, who was, yes, many things and quite pivotal in the development of the art scene in Bombay. So yeah, there are these longer entries with connected entries. So you start to see the sort of interconnectedness of the archive. So yeah, so we have this kind of map view of this, but you can also see that the archive, all of the entries in the archive sort of like index cards here. And yeah, you can choose whichever one you would like to have a look at. This is multi-authored, which is also a very nice thing about it. Because we're here at Art Deco Mumbai, we can maybe have a look at Lesser's boarding house, which was in the Mahal building on Marine Drive. Yeah, one of the sadder stories, I would say, in Jewish or German-speaking exile, in this case, Jewish exile in Mumbai, where the couple that ran this German-Jewish boarding house, Ellie Lesser, who was the woman, she ended up killing herself because she couldn't cope with the stresses that she was under and the situation that she was dealing with at the time. So it's not maybe what you want to think of when you think of Marine Drive, but it's something that I now always think of when I go past the Suna Mahal and imagining Ellie sort of desperate and jumping off a balcony. Anyway, sorry for that story. So back to today's talk. I'm going to now read from a script because yeah, I think it's better to convey the information in a more structured way from now on. So, spaces of togetherness, hotels as cultural hubs in cosmopolitan Bombay. So today I will explore how 2 iconic hotels in Bombay, the Taj Mahal Palace and Greens Hotel, serve not only as places of accommodation, but also as vital hubs of cosmopolitan sociability. Bombay, often celebrated for its diverse multicultural identity, owes much of its cosmopolitanism to its history as a city shaped by migration. The Taj and Greens encapsulate this spirit, functioning as contact zones where exiled artists, intellectuals, and local elites mingled, exchanged ideas, and fostered the city's vibrant cultural life. In this presentation, I will show how these hotels contributed to the city's cosmopolitan identity, offering spaces for art exhibitions, political discussions, and social events. At the same time, I will examine how their exclusivity, dictated by class, language, and gender, reflected the broader hierarchies of colonial society. Through these case studies, I will highlight the way in which Bombay's hotels both mirrored and challenged the city's complex social fabric. Among the truths Bombay holds to be self-evident is the fact that it is cosmopolitan, writes Naresh Fernandez in City Adrift. Bombay's cosmopolitanism is inseparable from its history as a city shaped by migrants. People arrived from various parts of India and beyond, drawn by the city's economic opportunities and its position as India's primary port. This continuous flow of migration fostered a diverse, multicultural environment where different communities lived and worked alongside one another, contributing to Bombay's growth in multiple ways. And here's a quote from Dinsha Wacha from Shells from the Sands of Bombay that kind of expresses this quite clearly. He says, "Do we not see every year how when trade is active in the busy season, people from the south and north, especially the Pathans, the Afghans, and others, throng to our markets? Then look at the number of Arab and Somali and other Mohammedan mariners, crews of buglows from Muscat, Makalla, Aden, Basra, and Zanzibar, who are to be seen in large numbers at our docks and more distant bundars. Is it not literally true that in modern Bombay we witness a truly cosmopolitan population in which every nationality is represented, not only from China, but from Japan on the east and from Brazil, Mexico, California, and San Francisco on the west?" By the early 20th century, Bombay had become home to a wide range of communities, including Parsis and Baghdadi Jews. These groups, particularly their industrialists, played a vital role in shaping the city's civic and cultural life, funding projects such as the Taj Mahal Hotel and Sassoon Library. Their patronage extended to supporting art institutions like the JJ School of Art and the Bombay Art Society, laying the groundwork for the city's burgeoning artscape. In the 1930s, Bombay also welcomed refugees escaping fascist regimes in Europe, many with Jewish backgrounds. In Baumgartner's Bombay, Anita Desai describes a scene in the late 1930s where the main character, Hugo Baumgartner, explains to a Jewish woman in a cafe in Venice that he is leaving Europe for India. India? It had the expected effect. The newspaper was lowered and her face appeared, a mixture of suspicion and consternation. But whoever goes to India, if you're not a sailor? Her bewilderment reveals not just ignorance, but a deep sense of disbelief that anyone, especially a fellow European, would choose to go to such a distant, unfamiliar place as India, a destination far removed from the European imagination of refuge. These migrants, while small in number, were instrumental in the development of modern Indian art. Figures such as Walter Langhammer, Rudi von Leiden, and Emanuel Schlesinger worked with local patrons like Homi Bhabha and Keku Gandhi to support the Progressive Artists Group and bring modernist art to Bombay's galleries and salons. Their collaboration enriched Bombay's artistic and cultural landscape, reinforcing the city's identity as a thriving cosmopolitan center of artistic production. In Bombay, various types of spaces facilitated interactions between locals and exiles. Private salons and art societies, galleries and exhibition venues, theaters, magazines, social clubs, cafes, jazz clubs, and even framing shops, quite famously. In this talk, I will focus on a particular space that encapsulates many of these functions within a single building, the hotel. Hotels have historically been regarded as self-contained spaces that reflect modernity, often operating somewhat independently from the urban environments in which they are situated. Early analyses tend to focus on hotels as spaces for the bourgeoisie and tourists, emphasizing their architectural form, spatial arrangements, and technological innovations. This view, which is a very architectural historical view, I would say, overlooks the ways hotels interact with the local populations, other than employing them as staff, reinforcing a sense of separation between hotel guests and locals. This presentation argues that hotels are significant spaces of sociability that not only provided accommodation, but also enriched the cultural life of local residents. Focusing on Bombay's Taj Mahal Palace Hotel and Greens Hotel, it highlights how these hotels fostered culture, intellectual discourse, and the local art scene. By linking the activities of both exiled and local artists to the hotels, it presents them as vital contact zones. Although hotels had become a recognizable typology in Europe and the US around 1800, according to Dinchawacha, Bombay lacked decent hotels until the mid-19th century. Prior to this, visitors typically stayed with friends or acquaintances, with taverns, what Wacha called third-rate grog shops, offering less appealing options, and clubs like the Baikala Club serving as more exclusive choices. Bombay's first hotels, Hope Hotel from 1837 and the Adelphi from 1859, which you can see on the screen, cater to the growing need for accommodation, especially as cultural performers arrived in the city. Simin Patel notes that performers were a significant category in need of lodging, following single male travelers and families. Among the notable hotels of the late 19th century was the Esplanade Hotel, also known as Watson's Hotel, which opened in 1871. Architecturally modern with a prefabricated cast iron structure imported from England, the hotel featured over 100 rooms and hosted cultural events, including India's first film screening by the Lumiere brothers in 1896. The Esplanade Hotel is also credited with inspiring J.N. Tata's decision to build the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. An urban legend claims that after J.N. Tata was refused entry to the Esplanade Hotel due to racial discrimination, he founded the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel as revenge. While this story is likely apocryphal, records show Indian guests at the Esplanade from its opening, it has contributed to the Taj's mythos. Opened in December 1903, the Taj set a new standard in hotel design in Bombay. Despite its eclectic architectural style, with corner cupolas and a central dome, the hotel, designed by D.N. Mirza and Sitaram Khanderao Vaidya, with W.A. Chambers Consulting, was technologically advanced for its time, featuring a steam laundry, Turkish baths, electric lighting, and more. The Taj, situated on Apollo Bunder and overlooking the Arabian Sea, immediately became a landmark. For those arriving by ship, it was often the first building in the city that they saw or recognized. The American author Louis Bromfield described the experience of a passenger nearing the harbor as follows, and this is from his book, Night in Bombay. The city had begun to appear out of the haze. The Taj Mahal Hotel, the Ready Money Building, the Yacht Club, the Gateway of India, and the green eminence of Malabar Hill, dotted with bungalows and the palaces of the Maharajas. The Taj Mahal Palace's hotel's eclectic exterior, blending architectural elements from various cultural contexts, along with its technologically ambitious interior, may be more reflective of Bombay's character than the modernism of the Esplanade Hotel. Early 20th century commentators often praised Bombay as the most cosmopolitan city in the world. Beyond simply bringing together different influences, the city generated hybridity. As Louis Bromfield remarked, Bombay wasn't anything but an extraordinary muddle of everything on earth. The Taj embodied this fusion with its architecture, local industrialist founder, European management, and diverse staff. Its entertainment featured acts from Chinese mime artists to American jazz bands, reflecting the city's unique blend of East and West. The Taj's cosmopolitan character was complemented by the neighboring Greens Hotel, originally built as mansion flats in 1890 by William Boyd Greene. Acquired by the Tata Group in 1904, Greens operated alongside the Taj, its elegant yet understated architecture defined by verandas and fine balustrades. Despite being overshadowed by the grandeur of the Taj, Greens was equally significant as a space for sociability. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, both hotels hosted political and cultural discussions, facilitated business deals, and provided venues for dining, dancing, and art exhibitions. These activities attracted not just tourists and colonial figures, but also locals from the English-speaking elite, including exiled artists. Where are you staying in Bombay? The hotel, I suppose. The Taj Mahal? Yes, the Taj Mahal. This is again from Bromfield's Night in Bombay, where Bill, who is the main character, is on a boat which is approaching Bombay, and he is cornered by a baroness who really wants to be friends with him, and he's not interested. Anyway, so for the wealthy, the Taj was the hotel in Bombay, known for its luxury. G.A. Matthews said it took one's breath away, though others compared it to a county jail or a railway station. David King described his room as dark and gloomy, ideal for wall lizards and enormous brown spiders. While the Taj aimed for luxury, it also offered shared rooms for budget travelers, whereas Greens was noted for its comfort. Lewis Bromfield described the spectacle of people in the Taj's public spaces as international, colonial, and local, moneyed and sexualized. He says, through the hallway and the bazaar came and went a procession of Arab horse dealers, British governors and civil servants, Russian and German trollops, Indian princes, jewel merchants, Parsi millionaires, comic middle-aged tourists, gamblers, oil prospectors. Notably absent from this scene are Indian political figures like Sarojini Naidu, a leader in the independence movement who lived at the Taj for several years, hosting meetings and visitors there. In 1915, after a disrupted meeting of Congress leaders and the Muslim League, the participants reconvened at the Taj, possibly in her rooms. European refugees fleeing National Socialism also began their stays in India at the Taj, including chemistry professor Stephen Tauber, who recalled staying there briefly in 1938, despite the high cost. Green's Hotel attracted a different, edgier crowd compared to the Taj, which a local newspaper called the Mecca of Haute Ton society, referred to by the Taj guests as the hotel across the garden. Green's was a venue for less sociably acceptable encounters, often involving lower-class European and Eurasians. It was also frequented by jockeys and the racing crowd during the season, and the stories of seamen's brawls at the hotel were common in the local press. Lewis Bromfield captured the diverse, multicultural scene at Green's, portraying it as poorer and more overtly sexualized than the Taj. He says, the people were fantastic. Seafaring men who would have been embarrassed by the mid-Victorian imperial elegance of the Taj Mahal dining room. English officers and civil servants and clerks who were there because Green's was bohemian and as wild a place as they dared frequent in a community where everything became known. Tired, plain girls shipped from the British Isles to relatives in the East to find husbands. Hard girls on the verge of middle age from Hove and Cardiff and Liverpool and London, whom some strange fate had dumped into Bombay as sleazy tap dancers and members of a ladies' orchestra. And here and there, a stray Russian tart or an advanced Parsi or Khoja woman dining alone with a man. Certainly reads as a kind of, misogyny present in Bromfield's writings. Bromfield's descriptions highlight both hotels as fashionable spaces where diverse groups gathered. Beyond being places of display, they also fostered social, economic, political, and cultural exchanges that contributed to community development and education. J.N. Tata and the Taj's designers integrated social spaces, including restaurants, a billiard room, and shops to attract non-residents. Among the shops was a bookshop offering rare publications on sexual health, making the Taj a unique resource for public health education. Green's also contributed to political discourse, hosting the offices of Crossroads, a Communist Party newspaper, under the stairs. Green's Hotel, like the Taj, offered billiards, snooker, and a well-regarded restaurant. It was also known for its long bar, exceptionally long bar, and lively evening entertainment, including a large ballroom that hosted dances, cabarets, and live music. In 1938, Viennese expressionist dancer Hilda Holger gave her first public performance at the Taj, though she was reportedly unimpressed by the spatial arrangements. Nobody at the Taj had ever heard of a dancer too proud to dance on the parquet between the diners. Hilda Holger demanded a stage, not a cabaret artistes arena. She had a will of iron and she got what she wanted. In the 1930s and 40s, jazz became popular in Bombay, with both the Taj and Greens playing key roles in the city's vibrant scene. International and local artists were often performed together at both hotels, with regular acts including Cricket Smith, Teddy Weatherford, and Chick Chocolate. Greens also served as a meeting spot for musicians playing elsewhere in the city. Notably, Amy Denton, a singer who performed at both venues, was later rumored to be a German spy, highlighting the centrality of these hotels in Bombay's civic life. While Greens hosted non-stop dances, the Taj held charity gala events, including a memorable cocktail dance for European refugees that spilled onto the streets. The Taj was also a favored venue for social gatherings, such as the wedding luncheon held by Rudi von Leiden, a German illustrator and art critic, who celebrated his marriage to Baroness Olga Mafalda de Bellatini. Information about hotel events was regularly published in the Times of India, which listed happenings at the Taj and Greens alongside other city events. The Onlooker, a local monthly, would highlight the most notable ones. Although these publications may have interested visitors, their primary readership was local, catering to English-speaking Bombayites, including colonial figures, expats, the Indian elite, and exiled artists. As the Times of India noted, Greens Hotel is also doing its bit to keep Bombay amused. Both hotels were central to the social and cultural life of Bombay's educated elites, serving as key contact zones where travelers, locals, and migrants intersected. Although records of exiled artists attending social events at the Taj and Greens are limited, their participation in other events at these hotels is well documented, contributing to Bombay's public discourse. Urban historian Prashant Kidambi credits the rise of Bombay's dynamic civil society to the growth of clubs and societies such as the Rotary Club, which played a vital role for the exiled community and the city's art scene. During the late 1930s and 1940s, the Rotary Club, a men-only organization, met regularly at Greens after having been founded at the Taj in 1929. Prominent figures in Bombay's art world, including Rudi von Leiden, Walter Langhammer, and Homi Bhabha, delivered lectures at these gatherings. Langhammer, a Viennese painter and former art professor, spoke on design for living, while Kaufmann, a composer and co-founder of the Bombay Chamber Music Society, discussed modern composers. Additionally, art patron Keku Gandhi, known for promoting young artists, received an award for his exhibition program. While none of the local artists were members, the Rotary Club offered exiled artists and others involved in the art scene a valuable platform to share ideas, network, and spark interest in art. Given that many members of the club were part of the local elite and intelligentsia, these meetings likely also contributed to the growth of an emerging art market in the city. In addition to hosting associational activities, the Taj served as a key exhibition venue in Bombay's art scene during the 1930s and 1940s. Art historian Yashodhara Dalmia credits the Taj with launching the career of Hungarian Indian painter Amrita Shergill, who stayed at the hotel and held a pivotal exhibition there in 1936. Her works were displayed alongside those of Sarada Ukil. In 1945, 75 paintings by Madhav Satvalekar were exhibited in the Prince's Room, followed by a 1946 Bombay Art Society show featuring Shivaks Chavda, an artist linked with the Progressives. As well as showcasing Indian artists, the Taj also exhibited international works by contemporary Chinese painters, for example. The success of these exhibitions was partly due to the efforts of curators like Rudi von Leiden and Keku Gandhi, the latter of whom served as the Bombay Art Society's secretary. Langhammer and von Leiden Both board members were instrumental in transforming the society into a hub for ongoing artistic discourse through regular salons and exhibitions, beyond just the annual shows. In 1949, the work of K.K. Heber, another progressive artist, was also displayed in the Prince's Room, drawing notable attendees to the vernissage. And this is a quote from the Times of India. Mrs. Wazir Tyabji, whose white sari had an exquisite Chinese border, Mr. and Mrs. W. Langhammer, Mr. Hubert de Limerac, the French consul, Mrs. Mehta in a red and gold Benares sari, and Mahamopadhyay P.V. Kani, the Vice-Chancellor. The onlookers' mention of the Langhammers highlights their prominence in Bombay society, much like Rudy van Leyden, whose wedding at the Taj was noted in the Times of India. The Langhammers were part of Bombay's cultural elite, and the Taj not only showcased Indian artists. Oh, I've doubled this. The Prince's Room and corridors of the Taj became key contact zones where Bombay's modern art scene converged. Progressive artists exhibited their work with support from the Langhammers and curation by Keiko Gandhi and the Bombay Art Society. Rudy van Leyden generated discourse through his critiques in the Times of India. These spaces, more than mere symbols of colonial asymmetries, facilitated active exchange between local and exiled curators, artists, writers, activists, and colonial figures. However, they were also exclusionary. Primarily English-speaking, these spaces catered to cultural elites and the intelligentsia, including exiled artists, while excluding groups like Marathi-speaking mill workers or Bihari laborers. And I'm showing here images by Magda Nachman Acharya, who, because of her gender and because of her background and her relationship, she was married to an Indian man. It made it more difficult for her to gain the kind of traction in these spaces that others like Langhammer and Rudy van Leyden did. And she dedicated quite a lot of her practice to portraying local people. You can see here some of the examples of that. She struggled financially in ways that many of the other exiled artists who I've been describing did not. And it was the same case for Hilda Holger, the dancer. So despite her rather feisty appearance on the scene with her demands for a proper dance floor in the Taj, she wasn't successful in the same way that the Langhammer was. So it's also a story of exclusion. The Rotary Club's men-only rule highlights the gendered and exclusive nature of these settings, and the public consumption of alcohol would have deterred participation from some religious communities. Yet the hierarchies at play were far more nuanced than the simple binary of colonizer and colonized. So, Jacques Derrida defines hospitality as an irresolvable contradiction, balancing between unconditionality and the rules of the host, making it a threshold concept. One spatial outcome of this paradox is the hotel lobby as a non-place, or as Siegfried Krakauer described it, a desert where hotel architecture prevents meaningful social interaction. Building on this, Mark Katz sees hotels as cities in microcosm, gated enclaves that separate guests from the urban world. However, hotels also embody transformative potential. As thresholds, they are both concrete spaces and liminal zones with the ability to shift between realms. Their spatial diversity, from public streets to private rooms via semi-public areas like lobbies, bars, and meeting rooms, creates an ambiguity that mirrors the transitory nature of their guests. This blend of spaces and identities makes hotels appealing as sites for exchange for both locals and exiles due to their cosmopolitan and transformative possibilities. In Bombay, the Taj and Greens served as spaces of sociability for the local English-speaking elite and exile communities, fostering forms of togetherness. Through an exploration of two hotels at the intersection of art, culture, and exile, a vibrant yet somewhat exclusionary image of pleasure, politics, and exchange has emerged. For the exiles central to Bombay's modern art scene, these hotels offered spaces for accommodation, performance, networking, exhibition, and discourse. And although the Taj is Bombay's most iconic hotel, and Green's part of it in some ways, other hotels in the city have also functioned in similar ways. And from friends, I've learned about, for example, the significance of sun and sand at Juhu Beach, and where, like in the absence of public swimming pools, the hotel's pool became a place where many children from that area learned to swim. The local importance of hotels extends beyond iconic buildings like the Taj. Given that these findings contrast sharply with Krakauer's views on hotels as anti-social spaces, it raises the question of whether Bombay is unique or if similar situations existed in other cities, particularly those with colonial histories. In places where colonial governments limited social infrastructure, hotels may have played a crucial role. A relevant example is the hotel in Dar es Salaam, described by Polish journalist Ryszard Kapuscinski, which was central to social life in Tanzania in the 1960s. He writes, "In the very center of Dar es Salaam, halfway along Independence Avenue, stands a 4-story poured concrete building encircled with balconies, the New Africa Hotel." And I'm afraid the image on the left of the screen there shows the old New Africa Hotel rather than this one that he's describing. There is a large terrace on the roof with a long bar and several tables, which seems to sound a little bit like Green's. All of Africa conspires here these days. Here gather the fugitive, refugees, and emigrants from various parts of the continent. In the evening, when it grows cooler and a refreshing breeze blows in from the sea, the terrace fills with people discussing, planning courses of action, calculating their strengths, and assessing their chances. It becomes a command center, a temporary captain's bridge. We, the correspondents, come by here frequently to pick up something. And I'd like to end with a bit of a footnote. So, despite their differences, the Taj and Greens were complementary. What may have appeared to other hotel managers as an undesirable coexistence, the Tatas initially viewed as an asset. This is perhaps not so surprising in Bombay, where differences are a constant and very present feature of urban life. The two hotels continued to function side by side in their contrasting ways until Greens was demolished to make way for the Taj's extension, the 21-story Taj Tower, which opened in 1973. While no doubt serving to increase the Taj's profits, this streamlining of the business erased a side of the city's cosmopolitan history. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. That was riveting. I almost forgot that I had to come back on because I was listening to you speak. Just to start off, I want to pick your brain to kind of understand what your interest in Bombay is as a researcher. You know, you mentioned that the METROMOD project looks at global cities like New York, Buenos Aires, there's London, Shanghai, Istanbul. But what guided your interest in Bombay specifically? As you mentioned, it was your city in the project. So where did that start?
Well, I mean, I think it started with my research on Königsberger, who I haven't mentioned at all in this presentation, but I could have, because he was also sometimes present in Bombay. So he was based in Bangalore for much of his time in India, but he, through his friendship with Homi Bhabha, was also involved in the development of TIFR, of the Tata Institute for Fundamental Research. And he produced early schemes for the building before they even had a site in Bombay, but after they had left Bangalore. So he would come to Bombay and work with Bhabha, and he often visited, well, not often, but he would visit Bhabha also after he had left India. So Bombay was part of that. And as well as being involved in TIFR, he was also involved in the development of Marg magazine. He was one of the original co-founding editors, it seems. And I was researching that during my PhD, and I came across figures like Minette de Silva, who I haven't mentioned in this talk either, and Mokraj Anand, and the sort of group that formed around them at Cuff Parade and the salons that they had held. So when this project, the METROMOD project, was in development, and the PI on the project, Borjo Dorami, to put together the research proposal with her, I already had a foothold, kind of, in the city, and it was a very intriguing one because it was, it did show this kind of cosmopolitanness of Mumbai, and which, despite being a colonial city, or a city that developed under colonialism,
Right.
was much more than that too. And the input of local industrialists and these exiled artists to me seemed quite fascinating.
That's really interesting, and I think it's also, I mean, in some ways also validating to what we've been trying to do. Also as Art Deco Mumbai Trust and our research interest in Bombay in the 20th century. And you've kind of like described this milieu of a lot happening in the city at this time. There are people coming in from all over the place for various reasons, I mean, like political turmoil taking place in the world at the time. But Bombay is the center of a lot of action. And we actually often argue that the Art Deco style in the city is also linked to its cosmopolitanism. You know, there are, of course, several Art Deco hotels in the city as well, but it also coincides with the emergence of the apartment style living, which fosters a unique kind of multicultural interaction. So to take you away from the hotel as a typology for a second, just to see how you would respond to that, especially because you've kind of mapped the urban topography of the city also at the time. So does the Art Deco style feature anywhere in that discourse?
Well, the Art Deco buildings do. In the discourse in the art scene, maybe not specifically, but I mean, Marine Drive does feature in, for example, Willie Haas, who was an exiled writer, and worked on film scripts when he was in India, in Bombay, before he joined the army and left to fight with the Indian army. He lived in the Suna Mahal on Marine Drive, and so he has these recollections of what it was like when, for example, the monsoon season began in Bombay, and he describes in German, which is German memoirs, of the sea and the rain lashing the promenade, and how he's taking refuge on a pile of bricks that are there because a new building is being constructed. So you can kind of you can feel the way that the city is developing, and the Art Deco is starting to take hold through his descriptions of the city. And also, Suna Mahal, there was also many of the jazz venues were like what is now Pizza by the Bay was Jazz by the Bay, and other establishments around there, around that area, were also part of the jazz scene. And there was a dairy. There were other places where people could meet and and relax and engage in conversations and so on in those Art Deco spaces.
Yeah, I think Suna Mahal, as you mentioned, kind of like plays a big part in what is happening at the time, especially given that it's at the end of Churchgate Street. There's a lot of activity happening around that area. And Suna Mahal, as you mentioned, was also at various points in its history has been a boarding house and has kind of housed people and exiles coming into the city at this time. It also happens to be the building that's on our logo. So we're also very attached to this property. Do we have a sense of, I mean, how these exiles that are coming in, the emigres that are coming in, how they're also shaping the topography of the city, like where they settle, what neighborhoods they kind of prefer to settle in? Was it around the Taj Hotel? Was it around where work was happening?
Yeah, so we did try to map that with the METROMOD project.
Yeah.
And we can see that around Colaba, and then Malabar Hill too. These were, I would say, like in terms of where the artists lived, those were the two main areas. And you can also see that they moved quite frequently. Like Rudy van Leyden had several addresses when he was living in Bombay. And Magda Nachman, Acharya, who I mentioned before, as somebody that didn't sort of achieve the same kind of success, in inverted commas, as the others did, at least financially, and struggled. She also lived on Malabar Hill.
Okay.
It also points to a kind of diversity that is no longer so visible in the cityscape.
Right.
And she had her studio there. Yeah. And you can also see the importance of clubs, so sports clubs.
But what are the pitfalls of taking this cosmopolitanism as a given? You know, are we in a danger of kind of looking at it from a rose-tinted lens?
I think maybe. I think we may be. Yeah, and certainly I think the kind of space that the Taj was in those days and the kind of cosmopolitanism that it kind of and greens as well. I don't know why I'm saying the Taj all the time, because greens was in my mind also just as fascinating.
Right.
That doesn't spaces that like that don't seem to exist anymore in the city. And of course
Yeah.
there are many reasons for that. Like in Bombay, of course, there were the terrorist attacks that have meant that spaces like hotel spaces, especially the Taj, have to be monitored and surveyed and policed in different ways, and that this kind of openness no longer exists.
Yeah.
But that's not just in Mumbai, that's in cities all around the world, the sort of tendency that we're seeing now that everything is becoming smoother
Yeah.
in a way, and this sort of grittiness is not as present anymore. So yeah, it is something. Yeah, I think a lot of people like it's something that people hold in their hearts, that Bombay has this kind of cosmopolitan nature, but it is something I think that has to be constantly re-won. It's not something that we can take for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has to be worked at. It's not something that happens. There is an organic element to it, but it is also people essentially that are making this possible, whether it's people that live in Bombay, call it home, or people that are coming in here for search of work and livelihood and all kinds of experiences. I'll quickly pivot to some questions from the audience. We have a question from Adyasha who says, very interesting to hear Derrida's notion of hotels as anti-social spaces and the lobbies as sublime, so to say. With respect to cosmopolitan culture, would corner shop conversations, or addas as we call in various Indian languages, also be considered antisocial, or is it too transgressive to be typecasted with hotel lobbies?
Oh, Ada, I don't know if an Ada could be
Heavy
considered
one.
antisocial. No, I don't think so. I think I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied Adas in great detail, but I do know that they were also very much valued by these exiled artists
Right.
as places where they would meet. For example, there's one that Amrit Gangar describes somewhere also near the Suna Mahal.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I hope not.
Okay. Mangesh Kulkarni says, any comparative observations, say Taj vis-a-vis analogous hotels in Western cities? Perhaps one of the cities that come up in the METROMOD project.
Yeah, I think there is something analogous, and I think but maybe there's something to I don't know exactly, because my research was on Bombay, and I wasn't and nobody else was really focusing on hotels in the rest of the group. So other than hotels that were specifically for migrants, like in Buenos Aires, there's this huge hotel when you arrive in the city where all migrants had to stay for several weeks. It was like a sort of starting point.
Yeah.
And hotels are also mentioned by the others, but it wasn't such a focus. But yeah, I think that certainly in many cities that I have visited, in places that had some form of colonization, they did function in this way, and that's the example of Tanzania. But I think also that they also used to play a far bigger role for the local population in places like London and Berlin as well.
Right.
Like the hotels were really part of the social fabric. Maybe though, and this is just a theory, that was more of a 19th century thing, whereas in Bombay, this carried on really into the 20th century, because the Taj was built at the beginning of the 20th century and really embodied this going forward for many years. The Rotary Club still meets in the Taj. Yeah.
On Tuesdays. Okay, here's another one. Calcutta and Madras were also port cities in the interwar period and have a long history of migration. But what makes Bombay such an exceptional arrival city, as you call it? Perhaps to rephrase, what attracted these people that were, fleeing turmoil also in their own countries? What made Bombay a city that could play host to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Some of the exiles also went to Calcutta. I don't know about Madras, but I don't think there were anything like I mean, there weren't huge numbers anyway.
Okay.
But the majority of exiles did at least start in Bombay. That's where the ships landed. I mean, that's one reason. But also, I think because of the cultural opportunities that were there in the sort of burgeoning film industry, and not that this didn't exist in Calcutta too, because, well, yeah, there's also an important film industry in Calcutta, but I think in Bombay, yeah, maybe also just because of this sort of idea of cosmopolitanism that was there
Yeah.
that played a big role, I think.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't know
it's
how much people knew about it in advance, but yeah, it's difficult to say. If you're interested in finding out more about exile in India more generally, the work of Margaret France, she made a book called Gateway India, which documents that in much more detail. It's a big, thick book.
Okay.
Unfortunately, only in German, but there are articles from it that are published.
Are translated?
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, all right. So whoever wants to make note of that, please do. What is it about this period and milieu that facilitates such an exchange? Today, we see greater possibilities of emigration and exchange, and unfortunately, also a lot of movement as a result of repressive regimes around the world. But are we seeing the formation of similar kinds of networks or shifts in topography of our cities as Bombay did in the early 20th century?
Yeah, okay, well, that's a big question. Oh, I don't know if I can answer that one, but and it's not something that I've researched personally. And of course, like digital technologies make this kind of exchange much more possible without having to be located in the same place or staying in or meeting at the same hotel.
Yeah.
But it's a very different kind of exchange, I think, than the ones that you had then. Of course, like postcards and magazines all served as technologies for that social media kind of has taken over today. So there are some kinds of equivalents, but I think art scenes generally thrive from diversity in the cities that I know well. I was in Berlin for many years, and yeah, that was a very diverse art scene that attracted artists from all over the world, some through choice and others through exile.
Yeah, and as you're saying, I think our lives are also moving towards the virtual sphere more and more. So there are, I suppose, changes happening, but the format is entirely different. It's almost not comparable to the early 20th century in some sense. I think that is all the time that we have for today's session. We had a lot of questions coming in from the audience today. But I think I'll keep that as the last question. Dr. Lee, thank you so much for these incredible insights, I think, into the genesis of what we call cosmopolitan Bombay. I think so much of what we take for granted in the city is an outcome of what was happening in the early 20th century and the history of how it becomes a modern metropolis. Thank you also to everyone for tuning in this Saturday evening, and I hope you had a good time. I just want to leave everyone with this lovely quote from, again, Louis Bromfield's novel, Night in Bombay from 1940. It says, "Bombay wasn't anything. It wasn't India or East or West, but an extraordinary muddle of everything on earth." So on that note, thank you. And I hope the rest of your evening is pleasant. Thank you, everyone, for joining.